Okay, this is a general store that every town had. We recreated this one out of salvage lumber. And note the Uncle Sam signs on each side of the door. That had a special historical interest to this area. In the late 40s, those were used as two halves holding up a mailbox out on the south shore about 4 miles from here. And I always, as a kid, when my parents would drive up to Big Fork or Kalispell, I always looked for that because I was excited to see Uncle Sam holding the mailbox. But during the Vietnam War, some anti-American protesters burnt the bottom out of them, and the mailbox fell over, and so they laid in a shed for several years. And I remembered that after I started the museum, when I approached the new owners of the property about them, and they said, okay, you can have them. So we had them touched up, and I thought this was an appropriate place. The general store also has a post office inside, a little post office, and just about anything you'd want to buy during those times. There's a meeting place. There's sometimes around the potbelly stove there'd be people playing checkers or something like that. You notice a couple signs up underneath the porch. It says free advice, political or otherwise. And it has Udy's Grocery Rollins. Now that has nothing to do with this particular store. However, the counter inside and the scales that were used by the Udy store up at Rollins. And just across the road was we'll get to it later, the Lewis service station, standard station. Now Mr. Udy sold Phillips gasoline, so we have competing gasoline, but that wasn't the worst part of it. He was a staunch liberal Democrat. Lewis's were staunch Republicans, conservatives, and they didn't speak to one another. So years later, when the highway was going to straighten out the curves, the Udy family donated those things. They tore down this store, so just bare land. And the house movers, the Lewis family gave us the service station. The house movers picked it up with cables, put it on their trailer. It was getting late at night, so they pulled across onto the Udy property. And the neighbors all had a good laugh because they said that was the only time the Lewises and the Udys ever got together. Now, funny thing is, we've had a lot of people from the Udy family come and visit the museum, and one of the Udy girls actually married the son of the Lewis that built the service station. They live right around the corner from us, so it's a fun thing. The Pepsi Cola thing, there'd be ice in there. And that was pretty common. Let's move over to the saddle shop here. So Jack Welch had a saddle shop just across the bridge in Polson. Wonderful old man. And when he decided to retire, he donated a few saddle shop items to us, and then he went into a rest home at the age of 97. And so he thought we were just going to put them on display, I suppose. But I had the idea, well, gee, maybe we could recreate a saddle shop. So I talked to his son, who still lived in the area at that time, and he says, yeah, he says, we've got the whole tool board and the stove and a few other things. Why don't you come on out and get them? And so I did that, and so we recreated the saddle shop. He had previously sold his sewing machine and to a friend, his small sewing machine. He gave us a large saddle machine and harness machine. And so we found an exact duplicate sewing machine down in Louisiana when I was down there visiting my son. And so the funny thing is, on his 100th birthday, his daughter from Missoula and his son from Polson, we had prearranged to have a birthday cake, big birthday cake, had him out here. And the newspaper came out, and he was in a wheelchair, but he was handing me a key as if he was turning the saddle shop over to me. It was a planned thing. But he didn't know I was going to make a sign for him for the saddle shop. And he was just in tears in gratitude. That's not the end of the story. So They ran an article in the paper, and 2 weeks later I get a call from a woman who bought a piece of property on Main Street in Polson, where Jack's wife had a sewing shop. I think her name was Elizabeth. And so the woman found in the basement this sewing sign down here, Welch's Sewing Center, sales service. Well, I didn't have room to build a sewing shop alongside of this. I had a lot of sewing machines and clothing and stuff. So I thought, well, I've got room over there, I'll build a sewing center over there. So there hangs underneath so it doesn't get damaged by the weather. The original sign, we have the original clock inside, an advertising clock, and some things from Elizabeth Welch. So now, husband and wife are on the same street. We think that's a pretty good story. This was built in 1938 up at Rawlins, and they had 3 log cabins as motel units. They wouldn't have probably had electricity in it. It probably had an outhouse, no running water. We have a 1928 Model A pickup that was actually used to deliver milk, but it's under there like it was going to be wanting to get some gas, standard gas, ethyl and regular. Back in those days, the service station owner would check the oil, check the tires, wash your windshield, check your radiator, all as a favor for buying gas there. And inside we have numerous what's called Petroliana. That's antique cans, signs, anything to do with the petroleum industry. So this is original sign post. Later on we found this original standard sign, and over across the way is a Standard Oil delivery truck, which would have filled up the tanks for the station here. And we need to do a little painting on our gas and cabin sign there yet, but it's pretty stable now. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe to the Miracle of America Museum.